In recognition of Child Month, we present a flashback episode from 2017 chronicling the story of Nicholas Francis, who was attacked on a bus while adults looked on, and the reactions from stakeholders which resulted. Here is Violence Against Children.
Doing good in your neighborhood, touching lives like you know you should. Doing good in your neighborhood, each and every day. The Susan Show.
Hi, I'm Susan and welcome to the show. Children from all over the island have lost their lives to guns, knives, anger, and the uncompassionate hearts of men and women. Do you know these names? Kimani Johnson, 5 years old. Daquan Davidson, 1 year old. Jamelia Johnson, 12 years old. Santoya Campbell, Nicholas Francis, 14. Stephen McLaren, 17. Shanika Gray, 15. These are just a few of our children who've lost their lives to grim circumstances. In today's show, we will look at the direct impact of crime and violence on the lives of our children. And with us is the State Minister in the Ministry of Education, Floyd Green, and Latoya Minot Hall from the Office of the Children's Advocate. All those names, and there's so many more. Let me start with you and the monument downtown. You've lost space.
Yes, we have. There are so many children that have died violently in Jamaica. To keep a record of it and to keep an honest record of it is just really baffling. There's no space on the monument as we speak, and that's really sad.
And you have visited the monument, sir.
Yeah, you know, it's probably been one of the hardest days that I've had on the job so far. Last year for Child Month, what we did was with the help of Scotiabank Foundation, the monument had not been updated for the last 4 years, and they took on the project to update the monument. I think the first heart-wrenching fact is that over 200 names were added over that 4-year period. But the other heart-wrenching fact was that, you know, we're frankly out of space, which really tells a very sad tale about how we've done as a society to protect our children and how much more we need to do. And, you know, the monument is important despite it being very hard to come to terms with. But I think we have to keep it in the forefront of our minds that we're just not doing enough. And as a society, we just have to do more.
And what makes our children so vulnerable to these attacks?
Well, you know, our children are always, in any society, children are the most vulnerable set. They're the ones which are in need of the most care and protection. You know, oftentimes they're unable to defend themselves, and oftentimes the ones who prey upon them are older. So they are vulnerable in general. I think the bigger question is really why, as a society, we haven't done more to protect instead of hurt. Yes. You know, when did we really change to you know, murdering children? You know, how does it reach to that stage? And it is something that we have constantly been looking at. In fact, we now have a draft plan to treat with the issue to end violence against children. In fact, last year, Jamaica put its hand up on the international stage to say that we want to help lead the world to treat with the issue of child violence. Unfortunately, it's not just a Jamaican issue, and the UN have a committee now, a global partnership to end violence against children. And Jamaica is now designated a pathfinder country. What that means is that we are really supposed to take the lead to develop initiatives to properly protect our children. So what we're trying to do now is to outline a roadmap that would outline how we will approach it from a policy and from an implementation standpoint for the next 5 years. So we have a draft program. I have given the team another 6 months to move from draft to the national framework towards protecting our children.
Wow. And Latoya, what are some of the reasons for these attacks on our children?
Well, as Floyd said, Suzanne, they are many and varied. One of the things we've found is that persons have become colder in society. Values and morals are not where they used to be. it used to be a situation in Jamaica where the village used to be responsible for raising the child. Now it's each man or each woman on his or her own with their own children.
Yes.
You find too that because our attitude has adjusted as individual parents, we don't necessarily want people to steer our children in a particular direction. So you'll find that persons will see children misbehaving on the streets and they will want to intervene, and then you'll find that parents will become offended, sometimes even become violent to the person who is trying to reach out to the child. And as a result of that, what you find is that persons have become reclined. They don't want to get involved because it has nothing to do with them. Single parent homes. The Office of the Children's Advocate, we're thinking now of looking at a project where we look at fatherlessness and the impact that it is having on the homes. We have found that a number of homes are headed by females. And not that they can't do a good job, because we've seen evidence across society of a number of women that have grown boys that have become excellent men. But what we've found is that with the fathers not being in the home, the level of discipline is not the same. That sort of strength you'll get from a man. A woman does not necessarily have that capacity. And so, you know, we're looking at the impact of not having these fathers. How has it impacted the children? How they have interacted with each other? Even the situation the other day with the little boy who chopped the other one to death. What I'm now hearing is that his sister was molested, and as a result of that, he had all of this inside of him carrying around. So, you know, anger is one thing to be blamed. You have a lot of absenteeism on the part of not just the father, but sometimes the mothers too. And so you find that children have this emptiness walking around with a void that can't necessarily be filled by people on the external. And as a result of that, they too grow up and become violent.
What's the case that stands out to you most, Minister?
I think young Nicholas Francis. It stands out because of the circumstances under which it occurred. In that, you know, by all indications, by all stories, it would have happened in front of a bus full of adults, right? And it really said to me that, as Latoya was saying, how far we have come, and not in a good way, in relation to the protection of our children. You know, one of the things that we've been trying to say at the ministry, and we will put in the policies and we'll put in the framework, but unless there is a shift in our mindset about how we look at children, then we're still going to have a difficulty. We have to recognize that every child is our child, regardless, because no parent can be there 100% of the time.
Exactly.
It's impossible. But we should live in a Jamaica where if your child leaves your house, goes out, going to school, traversing the public transportation, adults are around, we should feel assured that somebody is paying special attention to protect that child. Every time, you know, I speak about it, it really does bring a sense of anger. And it really does says, we're not doing enough as a people, right? So we are continuing that message to remind people that every child is our child, that we each have a responsibility to protect not just our own, but every single child, because again, the day will come when you pray for somebody to protect your child. And it's very, very important. But, you know, each of the stories, each of the deaths have been very, very difficult.
Yes.
I think the ones that involve 2 children have been especially hard. Tommy mentioned the one in Trelawney. And why it's hard is because, especially from a child development perspective, we do feel the anger and the pain of the family who has lost a loved one.
Of course.
But we also have a responsibility to reach out to the child that is the perpetrator, to find out why did that happen?
Yes.
Where did it go wrong in that developmental journey? And as such, we sent our first responder team. They went into the household, they went into the community, and I think we have to do more of that, of pinpointing these hotspot communities, hotspot families, and intervening and seeing how we can treat with the children. So each is very, very difficult.
How is this impacting the education system?
It does impact us significantly.
I mean, I've seen videos of the violence against children on children.
Well, yes. I'll take it from a number of angles.
Yes.
You know, we have, over the years, had problems throughout education and in schools in relation to fights and keeping our schools safe. To be honest, we have made significant strides. We did implement a Safe Schools program. We brought in deans of discipline, student resource officers, and we have seen vast improvement. The problem hasn't been eradicated, of course, right? We still have to do more to strengthen our guidance and counseling units, to intervene when children are having behavioral challenges. We're still seeing that. So we still have those flare-ups and those instances. But the significant impact we're also seeing is when a child is murdered from an institution. That impacts the entire school, the entire cohort, right? Or when a child is a perpetrator of a murder. Again, that impacts the entire cohort. One of the things that we have spent significant time developing is our first responders, who now go into not only schools, but homes to treat with the lasting effects of violence.
Director of Safety and Security in Schools, Assistant Superintendent Coleridge Minto, says the Safe Schools program was born out of the high level of violence in schools.
The Safe School program dates back to 2004, and it came about as a collaboration between several ministries, Ministry of Education at the time, Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Health, Jamaica Constabulary Force, and a number of stakeholders. And out of what was taking place at the time in schools, high levels of violence, we had a couple of deaths at the time, that came together, and out of many discussions and consultations came up with the Safe School program. Between 2012 and 2016, all our major areas in our schools, the fights went down, the number of weapons being recovered in schools, a big area was scissors.
And what types of violent acts are the students faced with?
From minor assaults to sexual offenses such as rape and murder. Robbery continues to be a major area. A lot of our children are robbed almost daily. As part of our strategy in the Ministry of Education, we included in our training of our Deans of Discipline a full session on gangs, because we understand that our students are from the same communities that the bigger gangs are operating in. And so National Intelligence Bureau was very graceful to us when they did 2 years in a row of orienting our school officials, helping them to understand what exactly is a gang, what are the features to look out for of a gang, and how to identify a young man or a young girl that is likely to be going down the wrong road. An innocent parent may not be aware that their child is involved in certain activities. But if they are exposed to certain levels of not just training, but just a level of appreciation, that this is a sign that the gangs were, these are the symbols that they display, these are the different types of tattoos that you will see, then it brings them into focus. Hey, why is my child wearing that? So gang activities are real. And some of our students, unfortunately, are involved in activities that are mirroring what the bigger gangs are doing.
Coming up, one JC student talks about the mood at the school after Nicholas Francis's murder. Moses Estick of Jamaica College says it was a very somber mood at the school on the days following Nicholas Francis's death. Tell us your name.
My name is Moses Estick.
Describe the mood at the school when you heard of Mr. Francis's death.
It was a very down mood. It was tinted with sorrows, and it was tinted with a lot of tears and, depression. A lot of people were melancholy about the situation. And the thing is, seeing how the situation turned out, it was very sorrowful because, being around a lot of adults, as you said, and I heard schoolmates were also there. So it's very sorrowful. And, I think problems like these start from the grounding of, families, as you said, and how social intervention comes into play around the society. Because when you see the kids on the road, it's as if the parents don't want to really address them, or elders don't want to address them because they know their attitude and they know their behavior and the manner to which it will extend. So the atmosphere was a very down one, but brotherhood was extended, all across, and they really looked out for each other and tried to comfort everyone.
Is there anyone here who has experienced violence?
My name is Moisha Kelly. There was an incident where I was hit by my because he said something to me and I didn't respond. He felt it was necessary to hit me and he slapped me in my face. And I have bruises on my arm and my back because of this incident.
So how do you feel about that?
I feel hurt because I didn't see the need for him to do that to me.
Have you spoken to him about it?
No.
Latoya?
I guess, you know, we have to be ready to deal with issues like this as they come. These are issues that we deal with at the Office of the Children's Advocate every single day. Floyd can tell you, changing the culture of how we see children is something that is very, very, very difficult. Children are to be seen, they are not to be heard. And whereas we promote the rights and best interests of children, one of the things we say is that children have a right to share their opinions, of course respectfully so, because parents accuse us sometimes too of empowering children with all these rights, and then at the end of the day they're saying, but you're not teaching them about their responsibilities. So we want to say to them that while we're saying to you, you do have the right to share your opinion, express yourself, you have the freedom of speech, it must be done within the confines of respect. Having said that, we have found that what we classify under the law as abuse, many people in society say this is discipline.
Oh.
And what you found is there's a thin line between discipline and child abuse. Parents have broken their children's arms. They have beaten them so badly to the point where, as the young lady described, there are welts, there are scars, there are bruises. Children have come to school, their performance may not be at the level that the parents think that it ought to be at. The children are slapped in their faces before other children. And so we say that this is abuse. It is abuse because one of the things you're doing is you're embarrassing your child when there are other ways that you could have gotten the message across to that boy or that girl to say, I am not necessarily pleased with your performance. A case like that is something that can be reported to the Office of the Children's Advocate, where we see that she's being disciplined because she did not respond, but the sort of discipline that is being administered is way too much for the action that was carried out.
Yes.
So of course, if someone calls us and says, a neighbor for argument's sake, and sometimes that's how we get our reports to. A neighbor
Yes.
will call and say, we observe that this child is being badly beaten. We observe that this child is always crying. We observe that the crying is not the normal crying that a child would do. So they call our offices and they report this to us. Our investigators immediately, we assess the situation and the severity of what is being said. And so we begin a file and we start our investigation. Once we find out that the complaints have strong and serious merit, then of course we see it fit where necessary to take action.
The other young lady?
My name is Masene Gordon, and there was an incident where Grand Market night, I was out with my family and I was on Constant Spring Road, and I was there and I had my phone in my hand, and a young man just came up to me and grabbed the phone out of my hand. At the moment, I didn't know what to do. I was so surprised at how he approached me. But at the end, I was thankful because he didn't hurt me in any way. But at the moment, there was so much anger on the inside. But I was grateful that he didn't hurt me.
Could have turned out differently. Because our students sometimes tend to retaliate or resist.
Unfortunately, we have too many of those stories.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that we have said to the police, quite frankly, is that especially when a crime involves a child,
yes.
and that a child is a victim of a crime, justice has to be sure. Justice has to be swift, right? And we have to ensure, and again, and I keep going back to this point, too many people would have seen that incident play out, and maybe they don't want to intervene, but yes. What about telling the police? What about giving a statement, right? But we want to ensure that people know that if they take the chance to harm any of our children, that the justice will come. We want people to remember two things. One, they have a responsibility under law to report when they suspect a child is being abused. And the key terms are suspect, and that it is a law. So they can be prosecuted. And again, I have said to the police, oftentimes the reports come in after something goes terribly wrong, and then the police go into the area and they may arrest the perpetrator, but we often stop there. And we're saying, let's not. What about the next door neighbor? Yeah. The aunt, the uncle? Did they know what was happening? We have a number of communities where we have underage girls living with older men, and the community, they know about it, and everybody keeps quiet until pregnancy or death. Yes. And we have to change that. One of the things that we have said to the National Parenting Commission this year, we want them to intensify the drive to go into homes and to help parents with alternative methods of discipline.
Director of Safety and Security in Schools, Assistant Superintendent Coleridge Minto, says that persons who attack students have no regard for law and order and no respect for humanity. How do you steal from a child?
We're part of a bigger society. You know, the schools operate in a number of cases in the same inner city or neighboring communities, where there are gangs in the communities, where people have no regard for law and order. And so invariably you find that there's no respect for humanity. There's no respect for humans, let alone children.
From your investigations, are these random or premeditated attacks?
Crime is organized. And I want to take it from that perspective. There are persons who will drive around and just look for an opportunity, and they see somebody and just prey on them. But there's organized crime. And there are persons who study and know the pattern and know the routes and plan how they're going to execute. And this is why when we speak to our students, as far as possible, and we say in our safety presentations, try to avoid routine. You know, people will, and this goes for adults too, you know, they know when you get paid on the 25th, and they know which machine you go to. Where you can stagger your routine a little, where you can not make it so predictable for somebody to know that you leave 5:30 every morning, this is the route you take, and you take the same. And so we continue to make, and I'm using your show, you know, to put out some of the safety tips. You know, walk in groups as much as you can, and large groups, not just 2 or 3. But when you're in a large group, a perpetrator might think twice about, do I want to attack these 8 or 9 or 10 students? Don't take the robot taxis. Not only will you not get insurance if there's a loss, but the risk is just so great because those drivers are not certified, they're not properly trained, they don't have any badge, and they don't have the requisite license to operate as public passengers. So we continue to make these appeal to not only our students, but also our parents who have the bigger duty of care over our children to ensure that they're also passing on the value systems and to telling our children where to travel, what route to take.
Next, we hear from the Association of Principals and Vice Principals on ways in which we can curtail the problem of violence against our children. President of the Association of Principals and Vice Principals, Linton Ware, believes it will take a multi-pronged approach to curb the situation of violence against our children. Tell us your name, sir.
Name is Linton Ware, principal of the Old Harbour High School and also president of the Association of Principals and Vice Principals.
This is a growing problem, you'd say?
Yes, it is growing. We are seeing more of it taking place in our society. There are a number of things we will have to do as a society to ensure that we curtail the problem that exists. And in curtailing the problem, I think one of the things that we need to do in terms of fixing it really, we have to go deep into the problem itself in terms of values and attitudes. It has to be a situation where we communicate that clearly to all individuals, where education is going to become very, very important. And I think the absence of it is what is creating some of the problem, where individuals need to be harmed with the information itself in terms of how you care for a family, how you raise a family. And I think if we happen to communicate and disseminate that information to individuals, I think it will make a lot of difference. And I think as it relates to parent-teachers meeting, we need to move away from just having regular meetings, but also having meetings that is going to impact our parents. So we have to have a situation wherein it is topic-based. So let us take, for example, this afternoon we are meeting our parents. It must be a situation in which we are going to be discussing different topics that is going to impact our parents seriously, because there's no manual out there for parenting. And I think if we can put together that information and communicate it in a clear manner to our parents, I think we would be able to help our parents as well. And it's not just about helping our parents, it is helping the community, because it must be a situation where each individual help the other individual as well. And I think once we are able to communicate that and let it be deep-seated in values and attitudes, because I think that is a serious thing that has been missing from our society, values and attitudes. And I think we have to go back there where we make it a serious issue, where individuals understand clearly that these things we are not going to tolerate, and we must go back to the old school. What is the old school? The principles of values and attitudes.
But what are some of the reports that you're getting from your principals around the island?
Reports that are coming in is that children are being neglected, no doubt about that. Children are being abused as well. And in solving it from the school level, we have guidance counselors, but the ratio as it relates to guidance counselor, because the ratio is 1 in 600, which means that based on what is happening in terms of the different problems, we have to look seriously at the numbers of guidance counselors that exist within our institution. And I think we have to take it a little bit further than just guidance and counselors. We have to look at social workers. And I think the Ministry of Education, will have to look seriously at that in addressing the situation where guidance counselors are concerned and also social workers, because we need both individuals in our school. So we need to have more of these individuals to help solve the problems that exist. It means individuals will know how to cooperate and how to behave themselves and how to conduct themselves. And I think with that communicated to our children as well, later on when they become parents, they will know how to shape their own families.
I see the young lady beside you, the head of the National Secondary Schools Council, nodding away. What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Daniela Woodbine.
Yes, and what do you think of what's being discussed so far?
Well, sitting here and listening to what is being discussed, I'll go back to a point that Ms. Latoya said in saying that at times as students and as young people or children, we're empowered about our rights. But there's one thing that at the National Secondary Student Council that we do is that we not only tell you what your rights are, but we tell you that you have a responsibility. So therefore, if you say that you have if you have a right to freedom of expression, you therefore have to do it in a respectful manner. And at the National Secondary Student Council, we're all about advocating on behalf of our students, on behalf of our children, on behalf of our youth. And so far, even for this year, 2016 to 2017, I can speak specifically even to my region, which is Region 4, which comprises of St. James, Westmoreland, and Hanover, where we've carried out conflict resolution workshops with our student councils. We've launched Peace Ambassadors Initiative in our high schools, where these persons are trained with the necessary skills. And I think what is one of the key problems is that we lack proper communication skills. And sometimes, even as students and as children, we feel as though we're not being heard. And so in retaliating and being in an environment or a society where what we see is violence in our homes, in our schools, that is what we're socialized into, that is what we're going to imitate, and that is what we're going to do. And that is what we find with our students in our school and our children in our society.
What are some of the incidents of violence that's been reported to your organization?
We've seen the reports, specifically even to Region 4 with Seneca Gray, with what happened to her. Personally, at my school, Belmont Academy, 2 years ago, Demario, he was murdered in his bed at home. He wasn't on the road. He wasn't where he's not supposed to be. He was in bed sleeping, and that's where he was murdered. Some of the reports that we have is that sometimes at school, sometimes students fear going to school because of the violence that are being perpetrated against them, and even in terms of sexual harassment too. So the abuse may be physically, it may be sexually, and it can even be verbally, because especially in our Caribbean, which is something that we hardly own up to, we have a culture of bullying in our schools, whether primary schools or even in high schools. We have these problems, but we're not allowed to really speak up about it. Or if we try to speak up, sometimes we're said to be hush-hush. Or a young lady wants to speak up about being sexually abused by a uncle or by a brother or by a cousin. They're told that what? You're going to embarrass the family. You're going to embarrass the community. So guess what? You're not going to say anything. And they're left to face all this pain, all this hurt, and not know who to turn to. So sometimes they even turn to persons who they think they can trust. And sometimes it might even happen that you really turn out that you can't trust them.
All right, thank you.
My name is Mitzi Harris Dillon, Public Relations Officer for the National Parent-Teacher Association of Jamaica.
And what's the impact that violence is having on your organization, violence among children?
It's heartrending, to put it quite simply. We are appalled at the incidences that do take place. The parents and the families are traumatized, and we ourselves at the National PTA, we are traumatized by the experiences too. One of the things that we try to do is to reach out to parents. We go through the local PTAs, we get information on the parents through the PTA executive, whoever it may be, and we actually go and visit with the parents. And we find ways in which we can support emotionally, whatever kind of support we can offer, we really do try to put it there.
Tell us about a case that stands out to you. You don't have to call names, but the impact that it had on the family.
The one at Jamaica College, because when young Mr. Francis lost his life, I can tell you when we got that WhatsApp message that evening, I was like, I thought I was in a different world. And so do my fellow PTA members. That's how they felt as well. We reached out to the PTA president, Jamaica College, Mr. Holmes, and our president, Mr. Hanneman, he had a conversation. They decided to put a call to action, and we were a part of it. All of us joined together. We dressed in black and we went out and stood up in front of Jamaica College that morning in October. Because the parents, I mean, when you look at how it happened, I mean, there were so many adults in that bus. And I'm saying, but we're all adults. How could something like that have happened and we did nothing? Aren't they parents? We're all adults. We're parents. You don't have to be the biological parent of a child for you to reach out. I mean, there's power in numbers. How could it that one person could have done such a dastardly act? And people sit down there and probably saying, you don't move, you know. I mean, what if it was my child? I would have wanted somebody to reach out. So if I was there, I would have reached out too. And that is what our responsibility is as adults and parents.
And what are parents doing to ensure that their children are safe when they go on the roads?
One of the things that we are trying to push out to local PTAs is engaging parents through workshops and different means, sending out information that will help to empower them. One, you need to protect your children. You need to explain to them the things that you need to do. You need to be aware of your surroundings. Practice the buddy system, travel in packs, travel in groups. You know, yes, everybody has a smartphone now, it's the way to go. You know, don't really put it out in the open. If you need to take a call, you try and, you know, be discreet about it.
Right.
You know, it's very difficult because I don't know when our society has reached this stage. I mean, violence against children, it's happening incrementally, and it is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. We are now on the international stage with this problem. And I'm really happy for a forum like this where we can really air these issues.
Thank you so much. When we come back, our audience members give us their take on the topic. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. This young lady from Mona High School does not believe this phrase. She tells us why.
In a society as Jamaica, we think that words don't have effect on us as individual, as children, but it has a big effect on us, because if you tell me that I am worthless and me not go come out to know, I'm going to feel like that. And you are my mother, and you say, you love me, and then if I do something wrong, instead of just correcting me and say, well, you should have done it like this, you are going to say, oh, you worthless and you this and you that. Even the boys, it has more effect on the boys than it does on females, because boys, sometimes because their fathers aren't present, the mother says, you see, like just like you worthless, poop on them something there, yeah, it brings them down, and then they bring that aggression towards others, because we can't turn on our parents and cuss them or no. So if you come across me now after my mother don't tell me that, me I go take it out on you. and those things lead to conflict, and we as a society, we don't recognize that, yes, your kids have feeling as well. And because of how we were brought up, the parents don't feel a need to change that attitude and bring up their child differently so they can be productive in society. Because I know of a lot of situations where my cousin, he gets it every day, every single day. When my call him, no make it. It no make. And him hurt, yes, if she go to school and she pick up all a bad report for him, she calls him, and know, and them way there. And instead of she encourage him, say, yeah, you can pick up. You do here, so you get this wrong, you can pick up. No, him worthless. And this me I spend my money for. Me I send a guy tongue and sell back. Back juice and them some of them. We don't like it, and parents fail to realize that it hurts us, because words are very powerful. Words are very, very, very powerful. I would prefer my mother beat me than my mother cuss me, because when she start, I don't know, normal. The authorities need to address this issue. And because of our culture too, a young man is not going to say, yo, dog, you know, say my mother, say my worthless, I'm this, I'm that. No, because the man will say, yeah, soft soap. Yeah, that's a no. And we need to change that mindset, because words hurt. And that also leads to sexual abuse. And because my mother cussed me and called me all sorts of things. You are my friend, and me think, yeah, we can do this and we can do that. So you don't even know that it's abuse, because you have, over the years, you have grown up that way. You don't even recognize. You go out on the street and you think you can do the same thing as your parents did. No, because you go to school, and they don't teach us this in school. They teach us the math and the English, yes, but they don't teach us how to build characters in school. We have to learn off the media, and some parents don't have time because it's them alone and them have to work 9 to 5, and when them come home, them want to sleep and them something there. The music that they listen to, it's not going to make a productive society. A young boy see a murder your thing there, and the type of society we're in, and him have access to a gun. A boy this him a go for him gun and shoot him.
Next, the challenges guidance counselors are faced with. Guidance counselor at Marvelly Primary and Junior High, Suzette Faulkner, says her job is very challenging as students are confronted with problems at school and home.
Good afternoon. My name is Suzette Faulkner, guidance counselor at Marvelly Primary and Junior High School.
We heard mention of the jobs of the guidance counselor earlier.
Boy.
How challenging is your job at school?
Well, there are two guidance counselors. I have Mr. Jones here with us also. And it is really a challenging task. The number of cases that come to our office every day, it is overwhelming. And it is said that every counselor needs a counselor. And for truth, you know, many times we have to have our own debriefing sessions, because we have students from grades 1 to 9, from as young as 6 years old, and they too are having harassment, both from their classmates or from people at home. So it is very difficult to deal with these situations. But what we have been doing at Marvelly, we partner with the National Parenting Support Commission, because we really cannot do it on our own. We have to draw up on the resources that are available to us. And last term, we launched a program, a special parenting intervention, where each month we focus on a particular area. They send their social workers to us, or they call them the parenting mentors, and we have small group sessions with parents, because we find that many of these parents are young parents, so they really don't know how to parent these young ones. And so they come in and empower the parents. They have small group sessions with both parents and children. And we have found that it is so needed, because when they explain to us the frustration in handling some of the situation they are faced with, no wonder everything comes back to the school.
Has your program been working?
It has been working, because these parents, when you send for them, they do come. And we want to applaud those parents who have made the effort. One of the things that is really overwhelming now, we have realized that several of our students are being exposed to pornographic material because of careless behaviors of our parents. They leave these materials out and the children access it, and then when they come, they share this information with those and expose it to other students. So we find that children are coming to us and reporting these cases. So this, I really want to say to parents, be careful. Because when a grade 1 child comes to you and tell you everything they see on those tapes, it's not a nice situation.
The reality is that the technology opens up a whole new world out there. And if you're not putting in the parental controls, if you're not paying keen attention, they're children. They'll explore, right? So that is an issue that we are looking at, and that we're working with the National Parenting Support Commission, but that the parents have to take in hand and have to do a lot more. A lot has been said about values and attitudes, and we holistically agree, right? We have restarted our Values and Attitudes program. It's going to be restarted in schools in September. One of the things we have found that in the Safe Schools program, if we're going to make our schools safer, we really have to deal with behavior modification. It's yes, you have to have the security apparatus, yes, you have to have the deans, but unless you're getting into the psyche of our children, you're still going to have the problem. So we have rolled out a pilot with UNICEF that has been going very, very well, that we plan to expand throughout our schools. And what I like about it, it has a committee that takes ownership of positive behavior in the schools. And the committee includes the vendor, it includes the taximan, because all of them impact what is happening in our school environment. And one of the big changes is that it's less about saying what is wrong and more about rewarding what is right. So we're trying to use positive reinforcement to change behaviors.
I'm Zaid Mark Gordon from the Charlemont High School. I'm the first vice president of the student council body. I'm responsible for student affairs and relations as it relates to students. Now, the thing is, a whole lot of students really take violence against students as a joke. One incident was in the Linstead area where a boy and a girl was in a fight, and the boy kicked the girl down the stairs. Now, when the boy kicked the girl down the stairs, everyone was in a circle and watching. Everyone was watching. There was no one there to go in or be an ambassador of change and say, stop. This is not the way. So I think that a whole lot of persons really have this concept of violence against children as a joke, or they're really taking it as a joke, because in that incident, if there was no one to step in and say, remember, we are children and we are all one, and they wasn't there to step in and say, do not fight or do not do this, they all laughed and they stood and watched. I really consider that they take it as a joke. What we need to do as students of schools is we need to take a stand, be an advocate of change, because change actually begins with us. So in making the change, we have to be the change.
Remember to keep doing good in your neighborhood.
Never miss a moment of joy. Subscribe now to The Susan Show and keep love and hope alive.